Maya Chen was good at being invisible. Not in a magical way, but in the way that some people just learn to fade into the background. At family dinners, her older sister talked about her latest academic awards, while her younger brother showed off his soccer trophies. Maya would sit quietly, moving food around her plate, wondering if anyone would notice if she just disappeared. It wasn't that her parents didn't love her. They did, in their own practical way. Both were engineers who believed in concrete achievements and measurable success. Report cards, test scores, championship wins, these were the things that mattered in their household. They asked Maya about school, of course, but their eyes would glaze over when she gave simple answers. She was average, and in a family of overachievers, average felt like being invisible. Most evenings, Maya retreated to her small bedroom at the end of the hallway. She'd close the door, put on her headphones, and let the world disappear. Music was her escape. Not just listening to it, but living in it. While other kids her age scrolled through social media or watched videos, Maya got lost in melodies. She'd close her eyes and hear entire symphonies playing in her head complex, arrangements that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Her fingers would tap out rhythms on her desk, her bed frame, even her knees. She'd catch herself doing it in class sometimes, drumming out patterns that matched the music only she could hear. Once, her math teacher had snapped at her for tapping during a test. Maya had stopped immediately, embarrassed, but the melody in her head kept playing. It always did. She never told anyone about this. How could she explain that music filled every quiet moment of her life? That sometimes she'd wake up at 3 in the morning with a melody so clear and urgent that she had to hum it into her phone before it disappeared? Her parents wouldn't understand. They'd probably suggest she join the school band or take proper lessons. Turning something personal into another achievement to track and measure. One Tuesday evening in late September, Maya's mother asked her to clean out the garage. It was the kind of chore that got assigned to whoever was nearby and not busy with something important. Her sister was studying for an exam. Her brother had practice. That left Maya. The garage was a disaster. Years of accumulated stuff created a maze of cardboard boxes, old furniture, and forgotten hobbies. Maya found her brother's first bicycle, Christmas decorations from a decade ago, and at least 4 broken lamps that nobody had bothered to throw away. She spent 2 hours sorting through everything, creating piles for donation and trash. Then, in the far corner behind a stack of boxes labeled winter clothes, she found it. The keyboard was really old. Its white keys had yellowed with age and a thin layer of dust covered every surface. Maya carefully pulled it out, recognizing it immediately. This had belonged to her grandmother, her father's mother, who had passed away when Maya was 9. She had vague memories of visiting her grandmother's small apartment, where this keyboard had sat by the window. Her grandmother used to play simple songs. Humming along in a language Maya didn't understand, Maya carried the keyboard to her room. Moving carefully so she wouldn't drop it, she set it on her desk, wiped away the dust with an old t-shirt, and searched for the power cord. It was still attached, wrapped around the back with a worn rubber band holding it in place. Her hands shook slightly as she plugged it in. A small red light flickered on, and Maya held her breath. She pressed down on middle C. The sound that came out was thin and slightly electronic, nothing like a real piano. The note wavered a bit, slightly out of tune. But to Maya, it was the most beautiful thing she'd ever heard, because it wasn't just in her head anymore. It was real. She pressed another key, then another. Listening to how the notes connected and separated, she spent the rest of that evening just exploring the keyboard. She didn't know how to play, not really. She didn't know about proper finger positions or music theory or any of that. She just pressed keys and listened, trying to find the melodies that lived in her head. When her mother called her for dinner, Maya jumped. She hadn't realized 3 hours had passed. At the table, her sister talked about an upcoming debate tournament. Her brother complained about his coach. Nobody asked Maya what she'd been doing, and she didn't volunteer the information. The keyboard felt like a secret she wanted to keep, at least for now. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Maya turned on a small lamp and opened her laptop. She typed "how to learn keyboard" into the search bar, Hundreds of results appeared: video tutorials, online courses, apps promising to teach her in just weeks. She clicked on a free beginner's tutorial and watched a patient. Instructor explained the basics. The instructor talked about posture and hand position, about finding middle C and understanding the pattern of black and white keys. Maya practiced along, her fingers clumsy and uncertain. The melody she made sounded nothing like the music in her head. It was choppy and full of mistakes, but she didn't care. She was actually making music, not just imagining it. Over the next few days, Maya fell into a routine. She'd come home from school, finish her homework quickly, and then practice. She started with simple scales, her fingers stumbling over the keys. Then basic songs, children's melodies that felt silly, but taught her how notes fit together. She practiced late into the night, keeping the volume low so nobody would hear. The strange thing was how natural it felt. Her fingers seemed to remember things before her brain did. Sometimes she'd play a sequence wrong, but her hands would correct it automatically, as if they'd been waiting their whole life to do this. The melodies in her head started finding their way out through her fingertips. Rough and imperfect but real, Maya's family still didn't know. At dinner, she remained her invisible self, nodding along to conversations about things that didn't include her. But now, she had somewhere to go afterward, something that belonged entirely to her. The keyboard became her world, a place where being average didn't matter, where nobody expected her to be anything other than exactly what she was. 3 weeks into teaching herself, Maya realized something had changed. She wasn't just learning songs anymore. She was hearing how they worked, understanding the patterns and structures underneath. When she listened to music now, she could pick apart the layers, the bass line, the melody, the harmony, all working together. It was like learning a new language, when she'd been trying to speak her whole life without knowing the words. Late one Sunday night, while everyone else slept, Maya closed her eyes and let her fingers wander across the keys. She wasn't thinking about tutorials or proper technique. She was just playing, letting the music that lived inside her finally come out. The melody was simple, but it was hers. Completely, entirely hers. For the first time in a long time, Maya didn't feel invisible. She felt like someone with something important to say, even if nobody was listening yet. 3 months passed, and Maya's secret world grew deeper. Every night after finishing her homework, she'd close her bedroom door and lose herself in the keyboard. Her fingers had stopped feeling clumsy. They moved with a confidence that surprised her. Dancing across the keys like they'd been doing this forever, she'd moved beyond the beginner tutorials now. The simple songs felt too easy, too predictable. Maya wanted more. She started watching videos of real musicians, studying how their hands moved, how they used dynamics to make the music breathe. She learned about tempo and rhythm, about how silence could be just as powerful as sound. But the best moments came when she stopped, following tutorials altogether. Late at night, when the house was completely quiet, Maya would improvise. She'd start with a simple chord progression and let her intuition guide her. Sometimes the melodies went nowhere, dissolving into random notes that didn't fit. But other times, something magical happened. The music would flow out of her like water, like it had been trapped inside her whole life just waiting for a way out. Her parents still didn't know. They'd walk past her closed door and assume she was doing homework or watching videos like a normal teenager. Her sister was too busy with college applications to pay attention. Her brother lived in his own world of sports and friends. Maya had become so good at being invisible that nobody noticed she was different now, that something inside her had woken up. The only close call came. One Saturday morning when her mother opened the door without knocking, Maya had been so absorbed in a new melody that she hadn't heard footsteps in the hallway. She jumped, her hands flying off the keys. "I didn't know you played," her mother said, standing in the doorway with a basket of laundry. Maya's heart pounded. "I'm just messing around." It was Grandma's. Her mother nodded slowly, looking at the keyboard with an expression Maya couldn't read. For a moment, she thought her mother might say something more, might actually be interested. But then her phone buzzed with a work email, and the moment passed. "Don't forget to clean your room today," her mother said, already turning away. Maya exhaled. The secret was still safe. At school, Maya remained her usual quiet self. She sat in the back of most classes, completed her assignments, and faded into the background. She had friends, not many, but a few people she ate lunch with and talked to between classes. Nobody knew about the music. It felt too personal, too precious to share. Then one afternoon in study hall, everything shifted. Maya was sitting by herself, supposedly working on a history essay. But her mind had wandered to a melody she'd been developing, a complex piece that kept evolving every time she played it. Without realizing it, she started humming. Quietly at first, just under her breath. But the melody built, and her humming grew louder. That's beautiful. What song is that? Maya looked up, startled. Mr. Harrison, the music teacher, was standing beside her table. She'd never had him as a teacher. She wasn't in band or choir, but everyone knew him. He was young for a teacher, probably in his 30s, with kind eyes and a reputation for actually caring about students. Nothing, Maya said quickly, feeling her face flush. Just something stuck in my head. Mr. Harrison pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. I've been teaching music for 8 years. That didn't sound like something from the radio. That was complex. Where did you hear it? Maya hesitated. The study hall was quiet. Other students focused on their work or pretending to be. She could lie, brush it off, go back to being invisible. But something about the genuine curiosity in Mr. Harrison's face made her tell the truth. I wrote it, she said quietly. I'm writing it. It's not finished. His eyebrows rose. You compose? I don't know if you'd call it that. I just play around on my grandmother's old keyboard. I'm teaching myself. Mr. Harrison leaned forward. How long have you been playing? 3 months? 3 months? And you're already composing original pieces? He shook his head, smiling. Maya, that's remarkable. Most students take years before they start writing their own music. Have you thought about joining the music program? Maya shrank back in her chair. No, I'm not. I'm not good enough for that. I just heard you humming something incredibly sophisticated. I think you're being too hard on yourself. He paused, seeming to consider something. We're having a spring talent showcase in 2 months. Students perform music, comedy, dance, whatever they want. You should audition. The suggestion hit Maya like a physical blow. Perform in front of people? The thought made her stomach turn. I can't do that. Why not? Because ... She struggled to find words. Because I've never performed before. Because I don't even know if what I play is any good. Because the idea of standing on a stage in front of the whole school makes me want to throw up. Mr. Harrison nodded, understanding. I get it. Performance anxiety is real, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. But Maya, if you have talent hand, I think you do keeping it hidden is a waste. Music is meant to be shared. I'm not ready, Maya said firmly. He didn't push. Okay, but think about it. And if you ever want feedback on your compositions, my door is always open. I'm in the music room during lunch most days. After he walked away, Maya sat frozen at her table. Her heart was racing, and not in a good way. The idea of performing terrified her. She imagined standing on a stage under bright lights, everyone staring at her, judging her. What if she messed up? What if people laughed? What if they realized she was just an average girl pretending to be something special? That evening, Maya practiced with unusual intensity. Her fingers flew across the keys, but something was off. She kept making mistakes, hitting wrong notes, losing the flow. Mr. Harrison's words had planted something in her mind, and she couldn't shake it loose. Music is meant to be shared, but why? Why couldn't it just be hers? Why did everything have to be a performance, an achievement to display for others? She thought about her grandmother, who used to play this same keyboard by her apartment window. Her grandmother had never performed for anyone as far as Maya knew. She just played for herself, for the joy of it. That was enough, wasn't it? Maya tried to lose herself in the music again, but the magic wouldn't come. She was too aware of her fingers now, too conscious of every note. She finally gave up around midnight, frustrated and exhausted. Over the next few weeks, Maya couldn't stop thinking about the talent showcase. She'd see posters in the hallways advertising it, asking students to audition. Part of her wanted to sign up, to see if she could actually do it. But a bigger part was terrified. She started avoiding Mr. Harrison in the halls. When she saw him coming, she'd turn down a different corridor, or suddenly become very interested in her phone. It was childish, she knew, but she didn't want to have that conversation again. The melodies in her head grew more complex. Sometimes she'd wake up with a complete song playing in her mind, and she'd have to grab her phone to record herself humming it before it disappeared. Her late-night practice sessions stretched longer. One night she played until 2 in the morning, completely losing track of time. Music had stopped being just an escape. It had become something else, something that demanded more from her. The songs she created felt urgent now, like they had something important to say. But Maya didn't know if she was brave enough to let anyone else hear them. She was stuck between two versions of herself, the invisible girl who kept everything hidden, and someone new, someone with a voice worth hearing. The keyboard sat on her desk, waiting patiently, holding all her secrets. But secrets, Maya was starting to realize, had a way of demanding to be told. Everything changed on a Thursday afternoon in late March. Maya was in her room, working on the composition that had been consuming her thoughts for weeks. It was different from anything she'd created before, darker, more emotional, built around a melody that felt like it came from somewhere. Deep inside her, the piece was inspired by stories her grandmother used to tell. Maya had been too young to fully understand them at the time, but fragments remained in her memory. Stories about leaving everything behind, about sailing across an ocean to a place where nothing was familiar, about missing home so much it physically hurt, while simultaneously trying to build a new life in a strange land. Maya's fingers moved across the keys, layering the melody with chords that felt both sad and hopeful. She was so absorbed that she didn't hear her bedroom door open, didn't hear the footsteps crossing her room, didn't realize anyone was there until a voice behind her said, "Oh my God." Maya spun around so fast she nearly fell off her chair. Her best friend Keisha stood in the doorway, one hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "How long have you been standing there?" Maya demanded, her heart hammering. "Long enough," Keisha said, her voice thick with emotion. "Maya, what was that?" I don't even have words for what that was." Maya felt exposed, like someone had walked in on her in the shower. This music was private. It was hers. Nobody was supposed to hear it, especially not like this, when she wasn't prepared. "It's nothing," Maya said, reaching to close the keyboard cover. "Just something I'm messing around with." Keisha walked further into the room, wiping her eyes. "Don't you dare call that nothing. I've known you since 3rd grade, and I had no idea you could do this. How long have you been playing?" "A few months." "A few months?" Keisha sat down on Maya's bed, staring at her like she was a stranger. "And you never told me?" "We tell each other everything." Maya felt defensive. "It wasn't a secret. I didn't think it was important." "Not important?" "Maya, that music made me cry. I walked in here to ask if you wanted to go get ice cream, and instead, I just heard the most beautiful thing I've ever heard in my life." Keisha shook her head. "You have to let other people hear this." There it was. The same thing Mr. Harrison had said. Maya felt pressure building in her chest. "No, absolutely not." "Why not?" "Because it's mine, okay? Because I don't want to stand up in front of people and be judged. Because what if everyone else thinks it's terrible?" Keisha looked at her with something like frustration. "What if they think it's amazing? What if there are other people out there who need to hear this music the same way I just did?" Maya didn't have an answer for that. She'd never thought about her music affecting other people. It was just for her, a way to let out feelings she didn't know how to express with words. "Mr. Harrison asked me to audition for the talent showcase," Maya admitted quietly. "I said no. The spring showcase." "Maya, you have to do it. I can't. You don't understand. The thought of performing makes me physically sick." "I'm not like you. You're confident. You don't care what people think." Keisha laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "You think I don't care what people think? I care so much I can barely sleep sometimes. But you know what I learned? The things that scare us the most are usually the things we need to do." They sat in silence for a moment. Maya could feel Keisha's eyes on her, could feel the weight of expectation. Finally, Keisha spoke again, softer this time. "What are you so afraid of?" Maya thought about it. Really thought about it? "I'm afraid that if I share this, it won't be mine anymore. I'm afraid people will have opinions about it, and those opinions will get stuck in my head. I'm afraid I'll start playing for other people instead of for myself." She paused. "And I'm afraid that I'll get up there and mess up, and everyone will see that I'm not actually special. That I'm just average Maya pretending to be something more." Keisha moved from the bed to sit next to Maya at the keyboard. "Can I tell you what I see? I see someone who's been hiding this incredible gift because she's scared. And you know what? That's okay. Being scared is normal. But letting fear make your decisions for you, that's a waste." Over the next 2 weeks, Keisha worked on Maya like water on stone. She didn't push too hard, but she was persistent. She'd bring it up casually over lunch. "Just think about it," she'd say. Or, "You don't have to decide today." She sent Maya videos of performers talking about overcoming stage fright. She even offered to go with her to talk to Mr. Harrison. Maya resisted at first, but something was shifting inside her. The music she was creating felt bigger now, more urgent. The composition she'd been working on, her grandmother's story told through melody, was nearly finished. And part of her, a small part she barely wanted to acknowledge, wanted someone to hear it. Not for validation or praise, but because the story felt important. It deserved to be told. One night, Maya recorded herself playing the complete piece on her phone. She listened back to it 3 times, trying to hear it the way a stranger would. It was good. Maybe even better than good. The melody captured something real: the ache of leaving, the fear of arriving, the courage it took to start over. Her grandmother's courage. The audition deadline was in 3 days. Maya made a decision. She found Mr. Harrison in the music room during lunch the next day. He looked surprised to see her, probably because she'd been avoiding him for weeks. "I want to audition," Maya said before she could lose her nerve. "But I have conditions." Mr. Harrison set down the sheet music he'd been reviewing. "I'm listening. I don't want to perform where people can see me. I can't do that. But if there's a way to play from backstage, or behind a curtain, or something like that, then I'll do it." He frowned, considering. "That's unusual. The whole point of a showcase is to, well, showcase the performers." "I know. And if that's a deal breaker, then I understand. But it's the only way I can do this. The music is what matters, not me." Mr. Harrison was quiet for a long moment. Maya could see him weighing it, trying to figure out if he should push her or accept her terms. Finally, he nodded. "Okay, we can work with that. There's a keyboard we can set up backstage. You'll play from behind the curtain, and I'll introduce it as an anonymous performance." Deal. Maya felt a wave of relief so strong it almost knocked her over. "Deal. I need you to understand something, though," Mr. Harrison said seriously. "If you do this, and the audience loves it, which I think they will, they're going to want to know who you are. They might call for you to come out and take a bow. I can't force you to, but the pressure will be there. I'll deal with that if it happens," Maya said. Though the thought terrified her, she submitted her audition recording that. Afternoon. Mr. Harrison listened to it with his eyes closed, completely still. When it ended, he looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Your grandmother would be proud," he said quietly. Maya felt tears prick her eyes, but blinked them away. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. In 6 weeks, she'd stand behind a curtain and share her music with hundreds of people. The invisible girl was about to make herself heard, even if nobody could see her. That night, she practiced until her fingers ached. The showcase suddenly felt very real and very close. But underneath the fear was something else. Something that felt almost like excitement. Maybe Keisha was right. Maybe the things that scared us most were exactly the things we needed to do. Maya played her grandmother's melody one more time, letting each note ring out clear and true. The music wasn't hers alone anymore. Soon it would belong to everyone who heard it. And that thought, terrifying as it was, felt right. The 6 weeks before the showcase passed in a blur of anxiety and practice. Maya's bedroom became a fortress of sound, her fingers working through the composition over and over until she could play it in her sleep. She'd wake up at night with phantom melodies in her head, her fingers twitching against her blanket as if the keys were beneath them. Keisha checked in on her constantly. "You're going to do amazing," she'd say, every day at lunch. But Maya wasn't convinced. She'd agreed to perform, yes, but that didn't mean the fear had gone away. If anything, it had gotten worse. The showcase date circled on her calendar felt like a countdown to her own execution. She didn't tell her family. Every time she thought about mentioning it, the words stuck in her throat. What would she even say? "By the way, I've been teaching myself keyboard for months, and now I'm performing in front of the whole school?" They'd have questions she didn't want to answer. They'd want to know why she hadn't told them sooner. Her mother would probably insist on helping her prepare, turning it into another project to manage. No, it was better to keep it quiet. The week of the showcase, Maya barely slept. She practiced until 2, 3 in the morning, her eyes burning with exhaustion. The composition had to be perfect. Every note, every dynamic, every pause, it all had to be exactly right. This was her one chance to share her grandmother's story. She couldn't mess it up. On Thursday night, Mr. Harrison called her into the music room after school. He showed her the keyboard they'd set up backstage, tested the sound system, walked her through exactly how it would work. The curtain would stay closed. She'd sit in darkness while the audience sat in light. He'd introduced the piece as an original composition by an anonymous student. Simple, clean, private. "How are you feeling?" he asked. Maya's hands were shaking. Terrified. That's normal. Even professional musicians get nervous before performances. The key is to channel that energy into your playing. He paused. "Do you want my honest opinion?" She nodded. "I think you're ready. More than ready. This composition is extraordinary. Maya, I've had students who've been playing for 10 years who couldn't create something this emotionally complex. Trust yourself." Oh, she wanted to believe him. But doubt was louder than confidence, and it kept whispering in her ear all the way home. Friday arrived. The showcase was scheduled for 7 that evening. Maya went through the school day in a daze, barely hearing her teachers, barely tasting her lunch. Keisha squeezed her hand between classes. "Tonight," she said, "tonight, everything changes." Maya went home at 3 to rest, but rest was impossible. She lay on her bed staring at the ceiling, her stomach twisted into knots. She thought about backing out. She could text Mr. Harrison, say she was sick, let someone else fill her spot. Nobody would care. Nobody even knew it was her. But then she looked at the keyboard sitting on her desk. The same one her grandmother had played decades ago. She thought about those stories about leaving everything familiar behind, about facing fear because staying was worse than going. Her grandmother had crossed an ocean to an unknown country. Surely Maya could walk across a stage, even if nobody could see her. At 6, she loaded the keyboard into her mother's car. Her family was coming to the showcase not for her, since they didn't know she was performing, but because her brother's friend was doing a comedy routine. Maya sat in the back seat, the keyboard on her lap. Trying to breathe normally, the school auditorium was already filling with people when they arrived. Students, parents, teachers, hundreds of them, all talking and laughing. The sound building into a roar that made Maya's head spin. She helped her family find seats in the middle section and made an excuse about needing to use the bathroom. Backstage was chaos. Performers were everywhere, running through last-minute rehearsals, adjusting costumes, vibrating with nervous energy. Maya found Mr. Harrison near the keyboard setup. "There you are," he said. "You're on 7th in the lineup, right after the dance trio. That gives you about 45 minutes. Do you want to do a quick sound check?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. He led her behind the heavy velvet curtain that divided backstage from the audience. The keyboard sat on a stand, illuminated by a single small lamp. Maya could hear voices on the other side of the curtain. So close, it felt like they were right next to her. She sat down and played a few measures. Keeping the volume low, Mr. Harrison adjusted the microphone placement, made sure the sound was balanced. Through the curtain, Maya could hear the audience still arriving, the scrape of chairs, the hum of conversation. "You're going to be great," Mr. Harrison said. Then he left her alone. The showcase started at 7 sharp. Maya listened from behind the curtain as each performer took their turn. A girl sang a pop song. A group of boys did a comedy sketch that got huge laughs. The dance trio Mr. Harrison had mentioned performed to a hip-hop track, their feet pounding the stage so hard, Maya could feel the vibrations. Then it was time. She heard Mr. Harrison's voice over the sound system, addressing the audience. Our next performance is something special. An original composition by an anonymous student performer. Please welcome them with your attention and respect. The audience applauded politely. Maya heard footsteps, Mr. Harrison leaving the stage. Then silence. Complete waiting silence. Her hands found the keys in the darkness. They were trembling so badly she wasn't sure she could play. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Sweat dampened her palms. This was a mistake. She couldn't do this. She couldn't then. She pressed down on the first note. It came out soft, tentative, like a question being asked in an empty room. Maya closed her eyes and let her muscle memory take over. The melody began to build, each phrase connecting to the next, like pieces of a story being told without words. She forgot about the curtain, forgot about the hundreds of people sitting just feet away. The music pulled her in completely, the way it always did when she played alone in her room. Her fingers knew where to go. They'd played this piece 1,000 times, and they played it now with a confidence her mind didn't have. The composition moved through its sections, the longing of leaving home, the fear of the unknown, the disorientation of arrival. Maya's grandmother had told her about standing on the deck of a ship, watching the only country she'd ever known disappear behind her, about arriving in a place where she didn't speak the language, where everything from the food to the weather felt wrong, about the strength it took to build a life from nothing. Maya poured all of that into her playing. The melody swelled and retreated, built tension and released it, asked questions and found answers. Her hands moved across the keys with a sureness that felt almost supernatural. This wasn't just notes anymore. This was history. This was family. This was love expressed in the only language that felt big enough to contain it. The final section approached, the part where fear transformed into hope, where the unknown became home. Maya's fingers danced through the resolution, each chord falling into place, like a door finally opening. The last note hung in the air, a single high key that faded slowly into silence. For 3 full seconds, there was nothing. No sound at all. Maya sat frozen, her hands still hovering over the keys. Then the applause started. It wasn't polite, clapping like the other acts had received. It was an explosion of sound that seemed to shake the curtain. People weren't just clapping. They were standing, cheering, calling out. Maya heard voices yelling for the performer to come out, to take a bow, to show themselves. Behind the curtain in darkness, tears streamed down Maya's face. Not from fear anymore, but from something else entirely. Something that felt like release. The applause kept coming. Wave after wave of it, louder than anything Maya had ever heard. Through the curtain, she could hear people calling out, begging for the performer to appear. Some were clapping rhythmically, trying to draw whoever it was out from hiding. Maya sat frozen at the keyboard, tears still streaming down her face. Her hands trembled in her lap. This was supposed to be a play the piece. Stay hidden, let the music speak for itself. Nobody had to know it was her. She could slip away backstage, and the mystery would remain. But something was different now. The music had stopped being just hers the moment those first notes left the keyboard. It had traveled through the curtain and touched people in ways she hadn't expected. She could feel it in the quality of the applause and the voices calling out. They weren't just being polite. They were moved. Mr. Harrison appeared beside her in the darkness. "Maya," he said quietly, barely audible over the noise. "They want to see you." She shook her head violently. "I can't." "You can. You just did something incredible. Let them thank you for it." "I wasn't supposed to. We agreed I could stay back here." "You're right. We did agree. And I'm not going to force you." He paused. "But I think you'll regret it if you don't go out there. This is your moment." The applause was starting to fade, growing confused. People were murmuring, unsure what to do. Maya heard someone in the audience say, "Are they coming out or not?" She thought about her grandmother again. about how many moments of courage it must have taken to build a life in a foreign place. Small moments, mostly. Introducing yourself to a neighbor, asking for help at a store, trying new food, speaking a language that felt clumsy in your mouth. Each tiny act of bravery adding up to something bigger. Maybe this was Maya's moment. Maybe this was her crossing the ocean, stepping into the known moment. Smaller than her grandmother's, yes, but terrifying in its own way. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." Mr. Harrison smiled and squeezed her shoulder. He walked out from behind the curtain first, holding up his hands to quiet the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to introduce the composer and performer of that beautiful piece, Maya Chen." He gestured toward the curtain. Maya stood up on legs that felt like they might give out. She took one step, then another, then pushed through the heavy fabric into the light. The applause exploded again, somehow even louder than before. The stage lights were blinding. Maya couldn't see individual faces, just a blur of people, standing, clapping, cheering. It was overwhelming in every possible way. She stood there, awkward and uncertain, not knowing what to do with her hands. She gave a small wave that felt ridiculous. The applause continued. Then, in the middle section of the audience, someone stood up more enthusiastically than the others. It took Maya's eyes a moment to adjust, to focus. When she did, her breath caught. It was her father. He was on his feet, clapping harder than anyone around him. And next to him, her mother had her hand over her mouth, tears visible even from the stage. Her sister was staring at her like she'd never seen her before. Even her brother was clapping, looking impressed. They hadn't known. They'd come to watch a school showcase. And instead, they discovered a daughter and sister they'd never really seen. Maya felt something break open in her chest. She'd spent so long being invisible, so long thinking that average was all she'd ever be. But her family was looking at her narrowly looking, and in their faces she saw surprise, pride, and something that looked like wonder. Keisha was standing too, in the front section with the other students, jumping up and down and screaming. When she caught Maya's eye, she blew her a kiss. Mr. Harrison stepped forward and handed Maya a microphone. "Would you like to say anything?" Maya took it with shaking hands. The audience quieted down, waiting. She looked out at all those faces, all those people who'd just heard her grandmother's story translated into music. She thought about staying silent, just walking off stage. But the words came anyway. "This piece is called Crossing," she said, her voice small and uncertain over the speakers. "It's about my grandmother, who came to this country when she was 19 years old. She left everything she knew and traveled across the ocean to a place where she didn't speak the language or know anyone. She was brave in ways I'm only starting to understand." Maya's voice cracked. "I found her old keyboard a few months ago and taught myself to play because I wanted to tell her story. Because I wanted to remember what courage looks like." She handed the microphone back to Mr. Harrison and walked off stage before anyone could say anything else. Backstage, she collapsed into a chair, her entire body shaking with adrenaline. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. The rest of the showcase passed in a blur. Maya barely registered the other performances. When it finally ended and students started filing out of the auditorium, she wasn't sure she could face everyone. But she had to. Her family was out there somewhere, waiting. She found them in the lobby. Her mother reached her first, pulling her into a tight hug. "Why didn't you tell us?" she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Maya, that was beautiful. That was beyond beautiful." Her father hugged her next, which was rare. He wasn't usually affectionate. "Your grandmother would have been so proud," he said quietly. "I heard pieces of her in that music. Songs she used to sing to me when I was little." Her sister looked stunned. "I had no idea you could do that. When did you learn? How did you learn?" Even her brother seemed impressed. "That was actually really cool," he admitted. They had questioned so many questions, but Maya was too exhausted to answer them all. They walked to the car together, her family buzzing with excitement, seeing her in a way they never had before. She wasn't invisible anymore. She wasn't just average Maya. She was someone with something to say, and they'd finally heard her. Over the next few days, Maya's life transformed in ways she couldn't have imagined. Students she'd never spoken to stopped her in the hallways to tell her how much they'd loved her performance. The local newspaper wanted to do a story about her. A professor from the state university's music department emailed to Harrison asking to meet with Maya, her phone filled with messages from people who'd been at the showcase. Some just wanted to congratulate her. Others told her stories about their own immigrant grandparents, about how her music had made them think about their family histories in new ways. One girl wrote that she'd been feeling lost and alone, and Maya's composition had reminded her that everyone struggles. Everyone has to be brave sometimes. Maya read each message with a sense of awe. Her private music, the melodies that had lived only in her head and her bedroom, had touched people, had moved them, had reminded them of their own stories. But the biggest change happened at home. Her parents started asking about her music. Really asking, with genuine interest. They wanted to hear her other compositions. They asked if she wanted proper lessons. They talked about visiting her grandmother's grave together, to tell her about Maya's tribute. For the first time in her life, Maya felt seen by her family. Not as the invisible middle child, not as the one without any special talents, but as exactly who she was, someone who had something beautiful to share with the world. 2 weeks after the showcase, Maya sat at her grandmother's keyboard late at night. But she wasn't playing for herself anymore. She was playing for everyone who might hear it. For everyone who needed to remember that courage could look like crossing an ocean, or standing on a stage, or simply sharing the truth of who you are. She pressed down on the keys and let a new melody begin. This one was different, brighter, more hopeful. It was about a girl who learned that being seen wasn't something to fear, that the things we hide because we think they're not special enough might be exactly what the world needs to hear. The music flowed out of her, through the window, into the night. And Maya played on, no longer invisible, no longer afraid, finally and completely herself.